Welcome back to Square Off. We've had a lot of water conversations on this show, but there's one topic we really haven't touched on. How much will you and I pay for water in the future? You could say it's getting drowned out, get it, by more urgent issues, the cost of housing, food, and other necessities, but we need to have that conversation about the one thing we can't live without. Arizona Republic opinion writer and water insider Joanna Allhands believes we need to have that talk now. So, Joanna, let's do it. Good to see you.
Hey.
Why isn't this an easy topic to talk about?
Because people freak out. Even though water in Arizona typically, at least here in Metro Phoenix, is definitely cheaper than your cell phone bill. It's cheaper than your cable bill if you still have cable. You know, it's something that people think should be cheap. And so whenever there's talk about raising rates, people freak out, and elected leaders freak out and don't want to go there.
So here's an interesting data point. What you just mentioned about Phoenix water rates has kind of surprised me, but you look at them nationally, among places that have a high risk of losing water, a high threat to their water, the rates tend to be the lowest, like in Phoenix. What explains that? Well,
some of it is we're younger. Right? So we don't have like 200-year-old pipes that are falling apart and that sort of thing. So we don't have, because infrastructure tends to be a lot of the bill that you end up paying for water. Right now, the cost of actually getting the water will be a lot more of what we pay for in the future. But right now, a lot of that infrastructure is really what drives your bill. And so because we're younger, because our cities are younger, we don't have as much of the huge cost for things failing.
And so the data shows there's already differences among valley communities and rural areas and how much water utilities charge. How could that change in coming years?
Yeah, well, we're all going to pay more. Whether you are in Metro Phoenix, whether you are in rural Arizona, whether you're in a suburb, whether you're in the urban area, you're going to pay more. The cost for water is going to go up because, one, we've got scarcity, so you're going to have to figure out where we're going to get our supplies. You're going to have to, there is infrastructure. We are getting older. There are pipes that will eventually fail. There's things that are going to have to be replaced. The cost of services, it's hard to find people who work in water these days. There's a labor shortage. So there's all sorts of things that are really coming in and pressing in on how much water costs.
And will there be winners and losers? Even here in Maricopa County, some cities that have much higher rates and some have much lower rates because of how they've set up their water supply.
Sure. Yeah, that's going to happen. And I think, you know, really the big question that we need to be thinking about is knowing that water is going to get more expensive. And that may not all be a bad thing, you know, that because we pay so little, we live in a desert. There's a good way to kind of drive conservation if you pay more. But we're really going to have to think about, so for people who can't afford water, what do we do about those people?
And that's a really interesting question. People on fixed incomes, people on middle or lower incomes. The issue of affordability. Has anybody even thought about this?
There's research that's emerging about this. There are ideas that are out there about what you can do to sort of help folks, you know, encourage people to use less water, and for people who cannot afford their basic bill, how do you get them a modicum of service? There's ideas out there. Is it being talked about politically? No.
Is it analogous or similar to what the utilities, electric utilities do for people on lower incomes, fixed incomes?
Somewhat,
Is that a possible solution?
Yeah, there's been talk about, you know, maybe if there are people, instead of completely cutting them off if they can't pay their water bill, and also because water bills often are, you know, lumped in with your sewer, your trash, all that kind of stuff. There's other stuff that is in a lot of municipal water bills. If you can't pay that bill, how do you make sure that you get a little modicum of water to people? You can kind of put this restrictor plate on people's things. So like they can still get a trickle of water. It's still going to provide them the water that they need to be able to wash their hands or, you know, do their dishes or whatnot. But it wouldn't be like the full amount that you would get. So yeah,
sounds like a dystopian future. Right now we're consumed by the larger issues.
Right.
You know, water on the Colorado. Is there going to be enough? How soon will we drill down? See government leaders drill down, say, okay, folks, we need to have this conversation, or it'll just show up in a budget.
That's the rub, you know, and I think that's the challenge, is that we don't really know how bills could go. There's so many factors that could change what you end up paying, just because, I mean, the raw cost of water is going to go up. And so how quickly is that going to happen? How much are we going to be paying? Those are really hard questions for people to answer right now, just because there's so much uncertainty. So that's the tough part, is you can't really say, like, this is how much your bill is going to go up. But that's what I'm saying is, we need to at least start being aware of that and planning for it, because you got to plan for water years in the future. So we got to start planning for a way to be affordable now, before it gets to the point where suddenly our bills are doubled and we're like, wait, what happened?
Okay, Joanna Allhands, great insight as always. Thanks so much for joining us.
Sure, thanks.
That's our show for this week. Thanks very much to all of our guests. Thank you so much for joining us. See you back here next weekend for another round of Sunday Square Off.